Right now, we're talking in the aftermath of the FA Cup. We now know the quarter-final draw. It's Man City, Newcastle, Chelsea, Leicester, Wolves, Coventry, Manchester United against Liverpool. I wonder how Doug King feels this morning, Simon, about Coventry being in that quarter-final draw. If you're Coventry, this is a great season, isn't it? You're knocking on the door of the playoffs in the Championship, and you're in the quarter-final draw of the FA Cup. If you're Doug King, you are well happy, you're not?
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's walked in the door, and in his first period of time, Coventry got to the playoffs, didn't they? So he will be looking at it and going, well, okay, I want to improve upon that. The fact that they're sitting ninth in the league, 4 points off the playoff spots, will be disappointing to him, because obviously the bigger position has got to be not these moments in time where you get to participate in an FA Cup competition that you're unlikely to win, but getting out of the Championship. Coventry have been out of the Premier League for 20 odd years, right? 21 years, I think, 2003. Yeah. And so, you know, when you've been in the playoffs in your first season, there's a propensity to think that's, well, okay, this football log isn't that difficult. Look, they're there and thereabouts, so in touching distance of the playoffs. It's good for them for a bit of extra revenue, but he'll take getting knocked out of a cup quarter final in preparedness for being more successful in the Championship every day of the week.
Absolutely. Quite a lot of you saying, look, our clubs didn't make the quarter-final draw of the FA Cup. We're out. Why are you still talking about it? Well, we're talking about it because it's a massive gig for those who are in the quarter-final draw. Man City, Newcastle, Chelsea, Leicester, Wolves, Coventry, Manchester United and Liverpool. And the more specific question is who has this become a bigger trophy for this season? Ten Hag, Mauricio, as Simon suggests, or Eddie Howe. There is Judge, who's a Liverpool fan. I would suggest that Chelsea need it most for the financials involved in making them qualify for Europe. Up the Reds, though, we're in it. Judge, you know you're in it, and you know you could win trophy number 2. More than likely that you might. Jason's a big Chelsea fan. Jason, what does being in the FA Cup mean to you and your club at this time?
Yeah, so I think that I'm one of the people who thinks the FA Cup is a big cup regardless of how your team's doing. But I think ourselves, Newcastle and Man United and pretty much everyone else have got to be realistic that Man City and Liverpool that are obviously left, they're streets above everyone else at the moment. So for me, if we was to progress past Leicester and we happen to get Liverpool again or Man City and we was to at least put in a good performance, then I'd accept that, because this is where we are at the moment. It's the same as where Man United are at the moment. They're obviously not at it, and Newcastle have done well, but they're not at it at the moment. So you just got to be realistic that the other teams are actually better than us. And put in, with regards to who needs it most, all three of us need it. Yes. But I just don't think any of us are going to get it. And, you know, it's Man City or Liverpool for me. And, you know, that's how I just see it. You know, we got to pick up the crumbs that they leave at the moment, unfortunately.
What a good call, Jason. Thank you very much indeed. Picking up the crumbs, Simon. I mean, he's a realist here, as Jason.
Yeah, I think
we need it, but we probably won't win it.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I mean, ultimately, Chelsea aren't as good a side as Manchester City and Liverpool. But on a given day, in a cup final, if you're lucky enough to get the draw, they've got a draw. They've got a great draw. They've got the best draw they could have had besides playing Coventry, in terms of where people are in the standings of English football. So you would expect Chelsea to overcome Leicester, irrespective of Leicester sitting top of the Championship. You would expect in an FA Cup quarter-final at Stamford Bridge, with the resources available to them, and a one-off game that you would expect Chelsea to overcome Leicester. Now, if they are fortunate enough to draw Wolves or Coventry, they're in a semi-final, and all of a sudden they're in a final. Now, what does that look like if they get to 2 finals? Of course, if they don't win either of them, the narrative will be spun out that you've got the perennial bridesmaid. But you start to build something. You never know. Chelsea, you never know on these situations. I would not bet on Chelsea overcoming either Liverpool or Man City if they draw them at some point, which they inevitably will. Because I think Liverpool will knock out Manchester United, and I think City will take out Newcastle.
I mean, Leicester's a big one for Chelsea as well. Leicester are flying.
Yeah, it's a big one because it's a potential problem for Pochettino, because they're flying. They got beat last week. They've got beaten in the last couple of games, Leicester. Yeah. The wheels have come off slightly from this march to a record points total in the Championship. Is not so prevalent now. Their performance over the season has been remarkable, but they were beaten by Leeds last week, and I think I would expect Chelsea to beat Leicester.
Okay, massive for Liverpool because they go to Manchester United. Manchester United against Liverpool at any time of the day or night is a huge fixture. The quarter-final of the FA Cup. Ross, good morning, big Liverpool fan. You've got one in the bag. Is this going to be another?
Morning, chaps. I'm hoping so, because for me personally, the FA Cup is bigger than the Billionaires Play League, so Champions League. And as we're not in that this season, I do think that the FA Cup's bigger for Liverpool this season, especially with Klopp's last season as well.
Yeah.
I'd rather see us go all the way.
What is your take? I mean, at the weekend, I put it to Tom Werner, your chairman. I put it to Ian Rush and I put it to John Barnes. That's one down. You've got 3 to go. Do you honestly believe, Ross, you have a decent chance of winning all 4?
Well, when I watched the game last night with the squad we had to put out, I did have my doubts. But with the end result, I'm confident. I'm confident we'll do it all.
You're confident they'll do it all. Okay, Ross, listen, thanks for that. I was just thinking, you've got links, have you not, to the youngster Kumas and the youngster Dan?
Yeah, well, Jason was at Tranmere. We tried to sign him from Tranmere when Lorraine Rodgers was the chairman of Tranmere Rovers, and Neil Dansey played for me at Palace.
Yeah,
for 3 years, and he's a good lad. Yeah, so there's a little, there's small, 7 degrees of separation in football, isn't there?
Absolutely. How important is it for Manchester United? Has this become a bigger trophy for Ten Hag than it has for Pochettino or Eddie Howe? Damien's a big United fan. Damien, what's your take on it?
Morning, guys. Morning, Jim, Simon.
Morning, Damien.
I actually don't think it matters for Ten Hag, simply because, obviously, if we go back several years ago, Louis van Gaal did it, and he got sacked simply down to, I think it's because of the league position. I think Ten Hag is going to face that same thing. So whether he wins it or not, I think if he doesn't get top 4, there is a potential of him getting sacked anyway. Personally, I think it's probably bigger for someone like Eddie Howe, because he's been at Newcastle for quite a few years now, and Newcastle haven't had a trophy for not sure how long. But obviously, with their new owners that they've come in, spent a lot of money for Newcastle as well. I would say it's probably more for Eddie Howe to get a trophy under his belt.
Good answer, Damien. Good call too. Simon, I think it is massively important for Newcastle. I mean, if they can somehow find a way of winning it, and I don't think they will.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, Newcastle haven't won anything since, 1969?
Yeah.
And obviously the expectation of the club, they had an opportunity in 96 to win the league. And all that went with Kevin Keegan, I think it was 96, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And being the entertainers, they've come back full circle now on last year's performance. I thought they were a wonderful watch last season. At times, the games they played against Man City in the early part of last season, where they really put Man City to the sword, and really were brave enough to do it, where other teams were, sort of packing in and deciding they were going to park the bus. Newcastle went at them. So I'd like to see Newcastle achieve something. Does Eddie Howe need it? If it adds a legacy to him, because if he wins an FA Cup for Newcastle, then it'll be something that someone hasn't done for a very long period of time, and it will start the ball rolling in people's minds of Newcastle's ascent to the inevitable opportunity to win things.
Yeah.
Again, all of them have, I think that if Man United were to finish the season where they are, or which is likely to be the case, I don't see Man United getting inside the top 4. They're 8 points shy of the top 4. Aston Villa are still going relatively strong, so I don't see Man United eclipsing perhaps Spurs or even Aston Villa. So you're looking at them having a Europa League berth in 6th, or a Conference League. Europa League. If they win the FA Cup, well, that cements that position. I think that if he were to win a tournament this season for Man United at the same time as dovetailing in his relationship with Jim Radcliffe, I think it would help Ten Hag quite a lot. It's not the same as Louis van Gaal. Louis van Gaal has spent the last 18 months irritating most people at Man United, falling out with the media left, right and centre. Whereas this situation is very different now. The Glazers have elected to sell a significant proportion of the football club, and that proportion is involved with specifically an individual that's focusing and doubling down on the football operation. Yeah. If that football operation has a trophy in the cabinet at the turn of the season for the beginning of the next, I think it would help Ten Hag. But I still think Chelsea and the opportunity to get into Europe for the following season, the revenues that go with that, the fact that it'll get a monkey off their back, and the fact that Pochettino can quell some of the sentiments around him, I think are the more meaningful attributes of that. Whoever wins it.
Terry's a big Wolves fan. Could well be us. We're cruising along very quietly, and it's
doing
Coventry
well.
next. We've got 1 foot in the semi-final. Maybe you have, Terry. Maybe you have. But remember, Gary O'Neill wasn't happy that these games are played in midweek because he says no. Maybe the purists are right in thinking it should be 3 o'clock on a Saturday. Carl's a Southampton fan. Carl, good morning to you. Were you one of the many who made the trip to Anfield, mate?
I did, yes. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Love both of you on the show. You're really good people to listen to. Make
Thank
my
you,
journey
Carl.
a lot better. I just wanted to say, really, I know you've acknowledged sometimes, but you failed to report that 6,000 Saints fans went up last night. We're bang out of form, and yet we still had 6,000 fans going up with a little bit of hope that we could pull a result out of the bag yesterday. So I just wanted to say, if you could mention Southampton taking 6,000 fans as well as you do the Leeds fans and the Newcastle fans, that would be great.
Carl, you've just done it, and you're quite right, mate. You deserve to be commended for that long trip last night. Would you rather they were all played at 3 o'clock on a Saturday, or were you comfortably enough in making the decision, I'm going to go, even though it's a Wednesday night and it's some distance?
Yeah, I would have gone. Whether it was Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. To be honest with you, because I love my club. It leads me on to the point that Simon made. I don't often disagree with you, Simon. You made a wonderful point about footballers acknowledging the fans, and I think you're very correct on that. However, you did make a point that, Gary O'Neill has just won a game and he's complaining about, the match being played on a Wednesday evening.
Yep.
Had he have not done that, and they would have lost, you would have called it sour grapes. So I actually am pro the fact that Gary's, mentioned that it should be played on a Saturday.
Fair enough.
It's the FA Cup, it should be on a Saturday. I know I've travelled on a Wednesday, but it should be on a Saturday. It's the FA Cup.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that in principle, because I'm a great believer in the value of the FA Cup, and the fact that it plays second fiddle to the Premier League and the Champions League often doesn't sit well with me. My only point was that I didn't think there was a necessity to address that issue. But you are right. If you can do it when you're winning, often it's done when you're losing, and it's sour grapes. You're absolutely right.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the TalkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. TalkSPORT.